Hello, everyone. I have my favorite spiritual friend with me, Gerry Eitner, and we're doing many little clips of on various topics, and it's such an exciting moment in both of our lives. We've been doing this for the last several years, very infrequently, but now we're on a schedule of trying to do as many as we can, and the first topic of today has to do from the light from above. And I'd like to hear your talk about that.
What the story about that? I've actually had two experiences, which were really quite dramatic, both times. The first one happened when I was 10 years old, about 10 years old. I didn't write it down, so but where it was and the time of my life and etc. Pretty definitive. And I'll precede the story by saying that I had a fairly dramatic psychological trauma when I was 7 that really impacted me. It was a spiritual trauma with the church, and we can talk about that part another time. But I think what this experience was precipitated by my inner soul, if you will, or inner heart, asking questions and saying, "Where's there an answer? Help, help!" That kind of thing.
Yes.
Can God help me? Kind of thing. And so the experience was we lived in Pennsylvania in the mountains, not high mountains, but beautiful wooded area. And is that working?
It's still going.
Oh,
It's
it's
still
still
going.
okay. Great. Uh, and I used to take a lot of solitary walks in the woods when I was that age. And we lived out in the country, and it was beautiful to walk amidst the trees and just kind of, you know, restore. And at one point I was doing that, and the light from the sky spoke to me through the trees. That what I refer to as the light from the sky, it looked like the sun. It was that bright, and coming through the trees, which I think was impactful. But it had a personage behind it, rather than just the sun. Definitely a male personage, and definitely very, very advanced spiritually. And it asked me in words, they were not audible words, but they were very distinct. What do you want from this life, this lifetime?
Yes.
And from out of my heart just sprung the word wisdom, which is not the kind of thing that a 10-year-old child normally says. But I certainly remember that. And that connection and the question and the answering and the response. And I did not tell anybody about that for 30 years, 30 some years.
Yes.
It's kind of like there was nobody, it went so deep in me that there was no even thought about who can I tell this to, or I don't think there was anybody who would have understood that.
Wow.
And then when I was going through a divorce, and it was a very painful time, and who are you? How do you reach out to people? How do you express grief and etc. That I told that story for the first time to some people. And the second time I had the experience of the light from the sky speaking was also through the trees again. This was in 1992, I believe it was. So I was very much of an adult at that time, and I was working. I lived in Clifton, Virginia, and I was working in Alexandria at that time, and kind of relaxing on the patio on a Sunday afternoon. And again, the light from the sky, looking just like the sun, but with a personage, same type of experience, told me to go to a particular place on Route 15 above Route 66, and to look west and then to understand how much nature feeds the soul, those particular words. So when I get that kind of information, I kind of salute, went immediately to that place that had been pointed out to me, and just looked west, and I was so grateful and so kind of caught in that feeling of how much nature does feed not only my soul but other people's souls. So the importance of nature. And I did this for maybe half an hour and then went back. And then the next day, the announcement was made that the Disney Corporation had bought up all the leases in the land and was going to put a theme park in that area. So the message from above had had implications for the area. And I tried. I would go out here to Warrenton and I would pass my card out and think, is there anything I can do to help?
Yes.
And other people had their ways of fending off the whole change which would have happened in this area with the theme park and another Disney World, that kind of a thing.
It would definitely transform.
Oh yeah.
The peacefulness that
The
you and
nature.
I experience in that area.
The whole nature of everything. And so much of my work is with people is about interacting with nature to connect this nature, this internal nature, and then to help people open up and heal and restore and be truly who they are, their own nature.
Absolutely.
So these two experiences of the light from the sky were very, very dramatic in their way, but and profound, profound. I think most people would have called that God, that experience God.
Yes.
I don't. I refer to it as the light from the sky, and certainly much more advanced than I am. But a great honor.
Yes.
A great honor to have experienced this.
Absolutely. We've often had many different thoughts and conversations on many things, and segueing to something similarly is the angel of peace idea. Do you have anything that you have experienced regarding an angel or angels of
Gabriel, Gabriel. I sometimes interact with angels and archangels, I would say, and have a fair amount of experience with Gabriel. And at one point, Gabriel came to me and was telling me about the angel's plan for peace, using that specific word. And I actually argued with him. You're allowed to argue with angels, as long as it's respectful.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. And I was saying, people find that word boring. They don't necessarily want it. Are you sure you want to use this word? And all of a sudden, on the other end of the conversation, there was like this kind of horn that kind of impacted. It's kind of like, I'm the boss. Whatever. And so my organization is called Communities of Peace for a reason. I lost the argument. It's okay. Right? But what my own definition of peace is not a boring thing at all.
Yes.
At all.
Yes.
It's more of a sense of completion. And you use the word joy a lot, and to be feeling that you're doing what you're here to do, the best you can, to be grateful, to be complete in all of that you're being your own nature. Here's where nature comes in again. And that's my definition. So it's not a boring, nothing happening kind of a thing.
And to that point about doing what you enjoy doing, I know you have counseled other people throughout the years, and I do the same thing when I have my meditation classes, and we talk about things that we're doing that we don't enjoy. And if we can ever segue into doing something that we enjoy doing, then we touch that fingerprint, I think, from our originality of doing the things that we were created to do. And if this can be a short lesson for anybody that's listening or out there in our unique audiences, to think about that, because I'm doing, as Gerry has been doing, the thing that we truly enjoy. And we do it slightly differently, but the same focus of how can we help other people maximize who they really and truly are.
Absolutely, because that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
You know, you have your own. Sometimes I call it a divine nature. Sometimes I call it inherent nature. But it's who you are.
Yes.
And when you're doing that, when you're being that, this children's cloth of many colors that I was the shepherdess of for 19 years, I loved doing it. I love working with people and talking to them about who are you and
Yes.
how can that come forward in a sense of fulfillment for you and
Yes.
self-expression.
Yes.
And it's my total joy to do it. It's not work.
No, exactly, definitely.
Do I get paid for it? Yes, a lot of the time, you know, but it's what everybody, I think, is here to do.
One of the most famous quotes that I have on my wall in Columbia, my home down there, is from George Washington Carver. And I'm paraphrasing this a bit. He says something of this, when you do the uncommon things in an uncommon way, you will receive everything from this universe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that. Yeah.
And when I first saw that a couple of years back, I printed it up and put it on the wall next to my desk because, you know, we're in a business of helping people to find who they really are.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't think that it would be such a hard or whatever for most people to know who I am, but we get programmed out of that in our society.
Yes.
You should be like this. Oh, why are you like that? I wrote a blog at one point called The Mockingbird, and somebody I really respected deeply told me at one point, I was getting ready to go to the United Nations to be a representative for the Millennium Forum around the Millennium. And this person I respected was saying, you know, Gerry, you need to focus on one thing. You're just all over the map. You do a lot of different things, and you need to focus on one thing. And I was kind of mulling that and thinking, you're probably right. It's a very smart person who is saying this, and so it was on my mind and my heart. And I lived at that point in a high-rise apartment building. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 nights in a row, a mockingbird came, sat outside my window, and sang all of its songs. And a mockingbird I looked it up, and at that point anyway, it said 22 different songs. I think there are maybe even more. But the message was clear.
Yes.
If this is the mockingbird's nature, not just to sing one song, but to sing many, and then to correlate them in one being, then that's my nature too.
Absolutely.
And just be it.
Absolutely.
Just be it.
Absolutely. You know, we have these conversations without being recorded, and we decided some time back that we want to pass as much positive information on, and we hope that you're visiting us, Gerry, on her Communities of Peace, and whatever she sends out on these videos, and likewise my Casa de Meta Foundation as well. We're partners in the beauty of life.
Absolutely. And I think what might be a good idea, Ron, as we kind of tie up each individual segment of this, we might want to just put our contact information on the screen. I think
absolutely that will be done.
Yeah,
that definitely will be done,
good
Gerry.
idea.
I had another thought that was in my mind, and it kind of went away, but it had to do with something you were just talking about. You know, we are in a time in our lives, and I don't think there's been any 100 years or millennia that does not have its number of challenges. And
Of course.
to that point, Gerry, what is your thought and vision of the near future?
Uh, I look out there. I was having this conversation with somebody last night. I look out there and I can see a lot of concern. Whether you look at nuclear, expansion and
Mhm.
problems, and when you look at political
Mhm.
difficulties and so on and so forth, and it's easy to see.
Yeah, it's
It's
right
easy
before,
for anybody.
right in
It's
front of
right
our
there.
eyes. Yes.
Or climate change, or the right now in Virginia where we are, the streams, the rivers are drying up. All of those things.
Yes.
So I see a number of valid concerns. And I was shown this kind of thing years ago when I would ask, what would be such an issue,
Mhm.
and the idea was, or the answer was more of a combination of things.
Mhm.
But I think regardless of when you look out there and you see all of these, potentials, the answer is still the same thing. The
Yes.
answer is to love, to do what you can and right in front of you, to express yourself the best you can,
Mm.
in a positive, to
Yes.
be in the solution rather than in the problem.
Yes.
Because if you sit there in fear or agony or retaliation or
Mm.
anything of that sort, it doesn't work any way you look at it.
Well, I definitely get that.
Yeah.
You and I have talked recently about this idea that I came up with probably 20 years ago, in 2002 or 3, when I was going to those retreats at Peace Village in the Haynes Falls city in the Catskills of
Right.
New York.
Yeah.
And I want to give a quick overview of that because
Okay,
I can
sure.
take a blurb out of that later on. The thought that I had reoccurring several times was, uh, is there a way, Ron? Is there a way that we can share how to be peaceful, and to do that in a way that it ignites
Mm.
thousands and thousands of people? And are you familiar with the experiment that was done by in 1993 by the Transcendental Meditators
Oh, the one in DC.
in
Yeah.
DC?
Yeah.
And
I am.
when I studied that, uh, what came out of that was that when like-minded people, uh, in the amount of 1/10 of 1% are in focused and meditating or praying or doing anything that is connected with peace and power, etc., etc., uh, you can transform the mindsets of those that may not be in line with that. Now, the experiment that was done in 1993, the Transcendental Meditators contacted the chief of police in Washington, D.C., and said that they believed that they could reduce the crime wave uh, by meditating in prayer. And the chief of police said, well, the only way that you can reduce that is to have 6 inches of snow in June and July, the middle of summer. Well, the end result of that, when I studied this, came up with two observations. One set of data showed that the crime wave was reduced by 18%, and another was about 24 or 25%. And the more I looked into that, I said, I would love to be able to get a group of people that can start this worldwide meditation. And we've come up with a wave or wave or covering the globe in every time zone, meditating. Now, we're looking forward to igniting this or starting this the 22nd of September, the day after.
21st.
The day after,
right.
International Day of
Okay.
Peace, which we hope to announce it at that time on the 21st. But it's something that has come to me many different times, and I basically, Gerry, I think because of that, I made a personal commitment to do everything I can for the remainder of my life to help other people have that internal peace, and then resonate that internal peace into their neighborhoods, into their city, and outward into their state and their country, and then adding as well the world peace. So that's the new challenge that Casa de Meta is going to work on for the next 10 or 20 years if need be.
Right. And it creates a field of energy.
Yes.
Yeah, that then people respond to. It's unconscious usually,
Yes.
not always. I was in a conversation with somebody about that the other day when he was in the Peace Corps, and he was in India for I think 3 years. And he said when he left, he didn't want to leave the country, and even though it was less economically stable, etc., all of that than the United States. I said I bet it was the field of energy that the goal at that time in India was consciousness.
Yes.
Whereas that's not necessarily the goal in all different countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So very, very important.
Yeah. Very, very important. I was just looking at our notes here, and I saw something here that says blending the dimensions. Usually, just a position.
What that meant was, I've been a spiritual coach for 35 years, something like that, and that has happened because I've had some fairly dramatic experiences, full Kundalini experiences, etc. So that I periodically will talk with archangels and communicate with people after they die, and I'm able to sometimes help people after they die, and have a number of what people call mystical experiences. And somebody like that maybe belongs in a monastery, in seclusion, or you think of that. How do you live your life when you've had those interdimensional experiences that many people want, but then how do you balance it all? Because when I had my first full Kundalini experience, it all of a sudden there was I was lying in bed one morning, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, it was like electricity going up my spine, from the base of my spine and then out my head and into what I now would call other dimensions, higher dimensions. And all of a sudden I was talking to archangels and etc., seeing the meaning of the world. And I had a stable life up until then. And I was married and did not have to work, and the bridge, the tennis, all of that life. But then for a number of years, I really wasn't even able to balance a checkbook, to do fine focus things. It was like the camera shutter went, whoa, but it didn't go back also, so that I could, and I didn't want to let go of this because that's the prize.
Yes.
And so it took years before I could also train myself to be focused enough to balance checkbooks, do logical things, etc. During which time I became a marketing manager who couldn't add, and I didn't even have that capacity anymore. So that's one level that I think is something that everybody, a number of people want to open up into, and I think everybody eventually will, sooner or later, open those higher dimensions. But I also then have been active at the United Nations and in Congress, and doing things and teaching meditation at the Pentagon, and putting a peace pole in the Pentagon, and doing things in the system. And that combination is not all that common. You're usually either or kind of a thing. So that's what I meant by that particular note, that the juxtaposition of somebody who has had that kind of experience, and then how can you try to make a difference in the world. I love working with individual people and with groups and retreats and workshops, But I've also been in the system and
Yes.
Created something that initiated something that became a congressional resolution for peace and a United Nations resolution for peace. Was asked to be and was an advisor for United States Department of Peace, etc., in the Capitol. And so that's somewhat unusual, I think. Not that other people aren't out there doing
No,
things.
no, definitely not. I think what comes to mind, Gerry, is that my lessons from you is that you have this innate ability to connect to the higher beings, if I can use that terminology. We call them, we call them angels. We call them those positive spirits, of course. And I've learned that, we all have that ability, but we need to be in a balanced. We need to be in a relaxed. We need to be peaceful from within, because those things don't come to individuals who don't have that peacefulness, don't have the how should I say this, the ability to just relax.
Yeah. And knowing that you're capable, that I call it, it's in the model. It's not that other people can't do it. I used to teach this for years. It's how to open up, how to drop the old stuff that's the clog in the pipe, so the pipe carries the light, but how to drop the old stuff that impedes the ability to do that.
Yes.
And one of the terms that's used is ascended masters. Some people, if you're raised Catholic, as I was, you might call them, you too, you might call them saints, that little, although the ascended masters includes beings from other approaches too, other than the Christian approach, but certainly includes Jesus and Mary, and and it's a total, it's honor for sure.
It's an honor.
Mary was the inspiration behind this children's class, or Cloth of Many Colors. She came to me at the Pentagon when I was standing there in the Secretary of the Army.
This actual one here behind you.
This one is about my mother, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
Okay.
Each one is different. But Mary came, Jesus' mother Mary came to me at the Pentagon when I was standing there, orchestrating this event when we dedicated a Peace Bowl for the Pentagon. And that's a longer story about this little girl, which I can tell another time. But when this idea was being brought forward in the Secretary of the Army's conference room, Mary came to me from above my head and said, I want you to take this on because you are a woman and a mother. And this is about children, about bringing forth their wishes for peace. This particular one, which is a favorite, and you can hear why, this is a picture of my mother. And at one point in 2004, I was in Chautauqua, New York. Some people know about Chautauqua. It's, my friend Jan calls it a live-in PBS, and it's which is very true. I grew up in that area, and certainly for the summer, people live there and visit. But there's a symphony orchestra. There are talks and educational talk, and it's absolutely. So we were showing the beginnings of this project for the 4th of July. So I was up there talking to a Rotary Club at 7:30 in the morning and about this project and what we were going to be doing. And all of a sudden, again from above my head, this is where the information often comes from in the.
Absolutely.
I call it the receiving symbol here, the 8th chakra, if you will. And I was reminded that I was speaking right around the corner from the orphanage where my mother grew up. My mother was orphaned when she was 4. And so I was told to go over and talk to the people at the orphanage, or what is now somewhat different, but still a children's home. So I went over there and knocked on the door and said, my mother grew up here. and they were all excited. They said, "Well, let us find her records for you." And so I
Yes.
have the records of when she came,
Oh,
when she
wow.
left, etc.
Wow.
So I said, "Well, would the kids here be interested in making a section for when we are on the program on the 4th of July at Chautauqua?"
Wow.
And they said, "Oh, we'd love to." So this was made by the children in the children's home. It featured my mother. It says, in memory of Gretchen Park Fahey. And then it quotes, "If we are to reach real peace in this world, we shall have to begin with the children," by Gandhi. So they chose what to put on here. I told them my mother used to roller skate when she was there, and told them about some of the things that she did then. And it was a very good orphanage.
Oh, wow.
I used to visit there when I was a child.
I never realized that these beautiful.
Oh, everyone has a story.
Has a story, a wonderful story.
Everyone has a wonderful story.
Yes.
And this is, of course, one of my favorites. And they made 2 sections, and we took the other one to Africa. One of the people in the organization was traveling to Kenya. And I was invited to go, but I had just had a heart attack, and my kids didn't want me to go. So she brought the other section to an orphanage in Kenya, and we have some pictures of that. And they made a section. Oh, it's lots of different stories.
Well, I know we're going to talk about each of these as we continue these conversations, but I had 1 or 2 thoughts I wanted to share. It was when I came to this region, the Washington, D.C. region in 2005, they were doing lots of construction on the southern and western portion of the Beltway, of the Capital Beltway. And construction was all over the place. It was haphazard driving. And I wasn't in a rush, and never have been in a rush when I'm in traffic. And I got an idea that I'm going to start sharing with people as well. I call it Let 5 In. Well, Let 5 In was my way of, when someone needs to cut over in traffic, I'd back up and let them in. And I would count. I'm an accountant, so accountants typically count, right? And before I got to the 5th car letting them in, I needed to change lanes. And every time, Gerry, since that time, when I look to check to see which lane I can move into, there's a space.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's a space. And so I kept this going on for several years. I would count, and never would I go more than 4 or 5, never would go over 5, that I would have a space to move in. I thought, wait a minute, Let 5 In. If we had drivers to use that philosophy when they're driving their car in the Beltway and other places, everybody has to change lanes. Everybody needs to let others in, but many people don't, as we know.
As literally and figuratively too.
Yes.
Right.
And I wanted to share that one thought that when it came to mind just a moment ago, because that's something that since 2005 I've had as a possible way to share information about driving. I worked with UPS the year before I went back to get my degree in accountancy, and I did it for a purpose. I did it to be able to pay off all my debts, because at that time, earning I think $11 or $12 an hour in 1975, 75 was quite a large earning, and I was able to pay off my debt. And when I went to the university, Florida Atlantic University, I had no debts, and I was able to focus on my studies. I don't know why I jumped into that particular part of it, but I wanted to share that thought about letting 5 in.
You know, it's so interesting too. We're creators. We're all creators in ways that we don't really realize. And that whole statement, "As you give, you receive," which Christ is known for saying. And one of my favorites, that supposedly is from Einstein anyway, said you only have what you give away. But and the why you're doing something, your intention. starts then revealing itself to you in your life in a lot of ways.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And so then more and more you start recognizing, oh, wait a minute, am I if life is a dream and I'm the dreamer, how much of this am I making up, and how much am I able to, and then how does that want to be? And that's a great example that what you find showing up for you that you
Yes.
didn't necessarily expect.
Exactly.
It wasn't why you were doing it, which is important.
Yes,
too.
and the other part that I've found in many of my experiences in life, I wait until something repeats 3, 4, 5 times, and I say, wait a minute, this is a message here.
Something.
And each of us get these messages daily, weekly, and when you become observant of those things that are just coming in out of the side, out of the eons that impacts your thoughts, and then you see this repeating, I believe that that's a message of something you need to adhere to.
Pay attention to.
Pay attention to.
What's this trying to say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow.
Good.
Well, Gerry, I don't know how long we have been at this, but
Right.
it's definitely been a wonderful. It's just 7 before noon time, and I'm enjoying it. We could go on for a little bit longer if you'd like.
Well, I think let's take a break
Okay.
and then kind of regroup a little bit. Yeah.
I like that word. I'm going to stop the recording
Okay.
here, voice. It actually pauses it,
Okay.
and then I can come here and pause this as well. 36 minutes we've been doing this, and so I'm